The White House says President Trump supports efforts to improve federal background checks for buying guns. This comes as President Trump meets this week with students, teachers, and local and state officials on school safety.
Now, the president is expected to take part in a listening session on Wednesday. CBSN political contributor and Capitol Hill reporter for The Hill, Molly Hooper, is following the very latest from Washington. So, Molly, Congress wasn't actually, you know what, before I ask you about Congress, let's talk about this news that the president says that he is willing to look into further background checks. This is something new. We actually haven't heard this from this president before.
Exactly. And, you know, this has been out there since that shooting in Texas at the church several months ago, because the shooter was from the Air Force, and there wasn't sufficient background checks done between and information sharing between the various agencies, you know, to alert officials of this person that this person should not be able to buy a gun. And so that's why he reached out to Senator John Cornyn, who is the #2 Republican in the Senate, who's leading the charge on this bill. And that could possibly, you know, move along in the House and the Senate, because it doesn't necessarily limit, you know, gun rights. It just increases the background checks.
So with regards to Congress, Molly, the Congress has not been able to pass sensible gun control legislation. They weren't able to do it after Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, or any other mass shooting. The president even using Twitter to suggest that Democrats never did anything about it when President Obama was in office. But David Hogg, who is one of the students who survived the massacre in Parkland, told me that he doesn't care about the past. He doesn't care what came before. He only cares about what is going to happen tomorrow. So what makes this time different? Is this a defining moment and the moment now for Capitol Hill to address this?
Well, let's see. Let's wait till we hear and see what these kids do, or not these kids, these young people who seem very active. I mean, this is for the first time since one of these, you know, major horrific events. We've really seen young people, and 18-year-olds, I might add, who do vote, who can vote if they register, you know, take an active participation in what they want to see done when it, you know, as relates to guns. And you know, these movements happen in this country. We have a lot of angry people out here in the United States, and when you get a lot of people together who want to make change, look what happens. President Trump becomes the president. I mean, so if these young people can harness this movement and they're able to do it in an effective way, let's see what happens come March when they are up here in Capitol Hill marching.
So part of their focus is that they say they want to create this badge of shame for politicians who receive money from the NRA. Do you think this is a good tactic to focus on the NRA and the money that's coming from that organization?
Well, it's hard to say. Covering Congress for as long as I've covered Congress, which, despite my youthful appearance, just kidding, I've covered it for a while. The NRA is a very powerful lobbying, you know, outfit. In addition to which, I mean, this isn't necessarily a Republican or Democratic issue. There's a lot of Second Amendment rights people, representatives who are Democrats and who represent conservative districts who are more, you know, pro Second Amendment rights. And so it's a tough foe to take on if that is the goal. But I mean, you know, anything's possible these days. And so, again, if you get enough motivated people and you get the organization in place, then, like I said, who knows?
You point out that the NRA is very powerful, Molly. What are the connections between the National Rifle Association and gun manufacturers?
That's a good question, and that's one that we will definitely be looking into more so as the days proceed. It's unclear to me what that is, but you know, the challenge with the gun issue is the genie's kind of out of the bottle if you talk to members of Congress. Guns are already out, you know, they're already out in people's hands, and it's hard to get those guns out of the hands of criminals, out of the hands of people who could do harm to others. And so then you get this vigorous defense from folks who want their Second Amendment rights to be able to protect themselves against people who would do them harm. And therein lies the problem and the crux of the matter. How do you get those guns back from the people who would do you harm, and that's a less clear that's a less clear result.
We perhaps talked about this in the past that approximately 20 years ago in Scotland, in Dunblane, there was a horrific attack on a school there. A lot of children were killed, and the United Kingdom decided, this one time is one time too many, and they put into place measures, sensible measures, to prevent people from having access to weapons. And since then, I think it was in 1996, they haven't had a single school shooting in that country.
We saw something very similar in Australia.
Right.
They had a mass shooting. They implemented tougher gun laws, and same thing. They saw shootings fall dramatically.
Well, and those are those countries. They're a lot smaller than the United States. The other aspect you have here is that we have, because we are basically a federation of states, it's incumbent on these. I mean, a lot of this has to do with states' rights issues. I mean, if you look at what was going on in Florida and the fact that this 18-year-old was allowed to buy an AR-15, I mean, that's a state law. So the problem is it's not just the federal laws. You have to deal with the state laws as well. And again, when you have an interest group that is so entrenched in all these levels of government, it's very difficult to undo that. And hey, like I said, you never know these days because people are upset. They don't want to see school shootings. This has been horrific. And so let's see what these young people can do. Young people and old people, because I don't mean to discount the what was it, Mr. Hoffman, who said he's not going to donate money to folks who don't, take a stronger position on gun laws. So if you get more donors like that combined with these young people, let's see what happens.
Let us see. Molly Hooper, thanks a lot.